Behalf of each of you, and we have lots of conversations in the office about how we can make things even better in Virginia, so you're lucky to have her in this role. I'm Secretary Kelly, so if Secretary Gadara is worried about your kids during school, I'm concerned about them after school. We have lots of conversations in the office about how we can think of it in that way and more of the mental better in Virginia, so you're lucky to have her in this role. How many of you were on Facebook? I'm Secretary Kelly, so if Secretary Gadara is worried about your kids during school, I'm concerned about them.
Do you remember? It was kind of neat.
So you can think of it in that way and more of the mental better in Virginia, so you're lucky to have
how many of you were cheerleading tryouts, soccer games? It was actually, I have relative nostalgia. It was kind of neat. So you can think of it in that way and more of the mental better in Virginia, so you're lucky to have how many of you were cheerleading tryouts, soccer games? It was actually, I have relative nostalgia. It was kind of neat. So you can think of it in that way.
Think of it in that way. Every aspect of our lives, the way that we eat, the way that we drink, the way that we fall asleep, and almost every aspect of our lives, like the ones I'm about to read you. You start the way that we drink, outside of your own experience as a mom at home. And so that's what think of it as that conversation culminating like the way I'm about to read you. You start the way. It didn't take long to see this impact outside of your own ways. I'm going to read these stats. Before I do, I want to tell you. And so that's think of it as that conversation culminating like the way I'm about to read you. You start the way. It didn't take long to see this. We don't want to say anything of your own ways. I'm going to read these stats. Before I do, I want to tell you. And so that's think of it as at least that's culminating. We got to have our conversation. Start the way. So here, we don't want to say outside of your own ways. I'm going to use things that I do. I want to feel shame. And so that's think of it as at least that's suicide. We got to have our conversation. Start the way. So here, we don't want to say outside of your own ways. I'm going to use things that I do. I want to feel shame. And so that's think of it as at least that's suicide. We got to have our conversation. Start the way. So here, we don't want to say outside of your own ways. I'm going to use things that I do. I want to feel shame. And so that's think of it as good suicide. We got to have our conversation. So here, you don't want to say outside of your own ways. I'm going to use things that I do. I want to feel shame. And so think of it as good suicide. We got to have our conversation. So here, you don't want to say outside of your own ways. I'm going to use things that I do. I want to feel shame. And so think of it as good suicide. We got to have our conversation. So here, you don't want to say outside of your own ways. I'm going to use things that I do. I want to feel shame. And so think of it without further ado, we would like to welcome Dr. Jonathan to the stage. Enormous, sought-after speaker. We are so fortunate. Without further ado, you all know we would like to welcome Generation, which is a bestseller, and the stage there is no sought-after speaker. We are so fortunate. Without further ado, you all know we would like to welcome Generation, which is a bestseller, and the stage there is no sought-after speaker. We are so fortunate. Without further ado, you all know we would like to welcome Generation, which is a bestseller, and the stage there is no sought-after speaker. We are so fortunate. Without further ado, you all know we would like to welcome Generation, which is a bestseller, and the stage there is
Thrilled to be here. Let's talk.
All right. So excited. Again, we're going to be talking about, he asked me to call him John, so I am going to do what I am told. We're going to be talking to John about the anxious generation, how the great rewiring of childhood again is causing an epidemic of mental illness. He asked me to call him John. In the essence of time, I'm going to do what I am told. We have put together. We're going to be talking to John about the anxious generation. I'm going to be asking those rewiring of childhood again is causing an epidemic of mental illness. Educators as well as in the essence of time. So I feel obligated to read them talking to John about the anxious generation. We get these questions asking those research we're going to be talking on a variety of educators in the essence of time. So I feel obligated to read them to John about the anxious generation. I'm going to be asking those research we're going to be talking on a variety of education in the essence of time. So I feel obligated to read them to John about the anxious generation. I'm going to be asking those research we're going to be talking on a variety of education in the essence of time. So I feel obligated to read them to John about the anxious generation. I'm going to be asking those research we're going to be talking on a variety of education in the essence of time. So I feel obligated to read them to John about the anxious generation. I'm going to be asking those research we're going to be talking on a variety of education in the essence of time. So I feel obligated to read them to John about the anxious generation. I'm going to be asking those research we're going to be talking on a variety of education in the essence of time.
supermarkets, they'll get kidnapped, we thought. That never, ever happened. But, well, all right. There was one sort of case that was a little bit like that, and that was at one case. And the whole country freaks out. We start locking our kids up. Supermarkets, they'll get kidnapped. Not that never, ever happened. So we take away the play-based childhood. There was one sort of case that was a little bit like that, shrinking, and that was at one case. The degree to which kids had the whole country freaks out. We start locking our kids up. Supermarkets, they'll get kidnapped. This incredible series of technological changes. So we take away the play-based childhood. There was one sort of case that was internet was amazing, shrinking. Millennials loved it. It came out very healthy. The iPhone was amazing. It was just a digital system. It wasn't dangerous at all. Take away the play-based childhood. There was one sort of case that was internet was amazing, shrinking. Millennials loved it, and now the phone is crazy. The iPhone was amazing. 2010, you get the first digital system. It wasn't dangerous at all. Someone else. For 2010, now the world is especially internet was amazing, shrinking. Millennials loved it, and now the phone is crazy. The iPhone was amazing. 2010, you get the first digital system. The world was never dangerous at all. Someone else. For 2010, now the world is especially internet was amazing, shrinking. Millennials loved it, and now the phone is crazy. The iPhone was amazing. 2010, someone else. Older people, if you could have brought your television into class and watched TV during class, that'd be completely insane. But that's what they do. That's what kids, if you have a smartphone, you've got everything right there in your pocket. And it's always going to be more interesting than the teacher.
If you could have brought your television to class and watched TV during class.
So that's really the transition
That'd
point.
be completely insane.
When
But
teenagers
that's what they
had
do.
flip phones,
That's what kids, if
they
you have a
still had a
smartphone,
recognizable
you've got
human childhood.
everything
Right
but
there
by
in your
2015.
pocket. And it's always going to be more interesting than the teacher.
If you could have brought your television to class and watched TV during
So that's
class.
really,
internet.
that's right.
All right. You explained 4 foundational harms of phone-based childhood. They include social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction. Can you tell us briefly a little bit about these?
Yeah. So if it was just watching TV for 5 or 10 hours a day, you'd say, well, that's bad for a variety of reasons. It pushes out exercise, it pushes out lots of stuff. And so what does, if they're spending 5 hours a day on social media is the latest stat, about 8 to 10 hours a day on their phones and other screens is the latest stat. What gives? Where do they get the time? And the answer is time with friends plummets. If you remember older people, you remember what it was like to be hanging out with your friends and playing, or on your own or having an adventure. Imagine taking 80% of that out of your childhood because everyone's on their phones. So social deprivation is you don't spend much time with other humans. You don't spend as much time with your parents. Sleep deprivation is obviously what it sounds like, especially if you let your kids have any sort of internet device in their bedrooms. They're going to be these things have such a grip that they're going to be in front of their face in the bedroom. Attention fragmentation. This is especially about TikTok, but it's all of them really. Young people, we're seeing this all over. College professors were seeing this. It's just harder. Our students have a lot more trouble focusing, doing their homework. There are so many distractions, and they didn't. In your teen years, you develop what's called executive function, where your brain learns to make a plan and then do what's necessary to achieve the plan and stick with it. But a lot of our students are getting 300, 400, 500 notifications a day. They're getting pinged, they're getting interrupted every few minutes. They don't know what it is to focus for 10, 15 minutes. And this is happening even in classes, because if you have it in your pocket, you're going to check. My kids go to New York City public schools, you just put it in a book, you put it in your desk. Other teachers have told me, boy, kids sure go to the bathroom a lot more nowadays than they used to. So attention fragmentation, and then the last is addiction. And this isn't just about social media. This is all of these apps are competing with each other to keep your kids' attention. And what that means is you want to get them to do a behavior and then get a reward on a variable ratio schedule. That's the way you addict someone. That's the way you get rapid levels of behavior, whether you're training a rat or a dog or a child. And so you don't want your kid exposed to a company that's going to do stimulus, response, reward, 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 quick dopamine hit, brain rewires because there's too much dopamine. You're now less responsive to dopamine. And so a kid who is playing these incredible video games and this incredible pornography for hours every day, when they're not doing that, their brain says, this is so boring. I can't stand this, whatever it is. I need stimulation. So those are the 4 major harms that affect everyone. But then there's like dozens of other gender-specific harms.
One of my favorite sort of topics that you talk about in the book, and I think it's really relevant as a subtext to what you just mentioned, is this notion of slow growth childhood. Can you expand on that? And more importantly, from a developmental standpoint, a coping standpoint with life, can you tell us a little bit why that is so critically important?
Sure. So, the book isn't just, again, it's not just about social media and phones. It's really about childhood. And humans have this bizarre childhood. Every other animal, every other mammal, including all the primates, they're born small, and then they grow and grow and grow, and then they reproduce. But humans have this interesting, I learned this long ago in graduate school, that we grow fast for the first couple of years, then we slow down for a number of years. We slow down, we're growing, but very slowly. Our brain is full size by age 6, almost it's 90% of full size by age 6, but our body's very small, grows slowly, slowly, slowly. And then we have our growth spurt in puberty, and then we grow fast, and then we're sexually reproductive. Why the delay? Why the slow growth? And the answer seems to be that the amazing human adaptation that makes us cover the world is culture. We are cultural creatures. We learn, and where do we get our culture from? From our elders. Culture has always been transmitted from one generation down to the next with modification. Kids need to be enculturated. All traditional societies have initiation rites. The kids are learning not from their parents. Initiation rites are never guided by the parents. It's always other. If you're a girl, it's going to be other women in the community. If you're a boy, it's going to be men in the community. They're socializing in how does a girl become a woman? How does a boy become a man? Imagine if we cut all that off. How about no more of that? No more intergenerational learning. Let's just have kids hook up to random weirdos on the internet who are selected by algorithm for their extremity, and let's have them watch that for 5 hours a day. That's their socialization? So slow growth childhood means we have a long period for cultural learning. And the most intense period of cultural learning seems to be about age 9 or 10 to about 14, 15. And that's exactly when American kids stop paying attention to the world around them and hook their eyes up to a fire hose of garbage, frankly.
I mean, what an incredible argument for your point number 2, no social media before 16. I mean, you just made the case. But let's follow up on that a little bit. In the book, you mentioned the high likelihood that when a child becomes addicted to anything at a young age, that it could lead to continued addiction and more harmful coping mechanisms or lack thereof later in life.
That's right.
Can you speak to that, please?
So there's a wonderful book called Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke, and there are a lot of people writing about dopamine these days. But basically, if your brain has been trained to need more stimulation, you're more vulnerable to all kinds of addiction. You didn't develop executive function as well as you would have. You don't know how to delay gratification as well as you would have, which means you're much more vulnerable to the appeals of any other company that has an addictive product. And that would include gambling and casinos. So you really want your kids in their teen years to develop the ability to focus and guide their own behavior. You don't want to hook them up to a company who's literally paying its engineers bonuses if they can keep you on longer. That is literally what Meta did in the 2010s. Bonuses if you can keep them on longer. Addiction is a huge problem, especially for boys. Boys are getting just easily addicted to all sorts of things: gambling, sports betting, porn, vaping. So we really have to look out for our kids' brains and give them slow dopamine is the thing. You strive for something, you work hard for it, and then you get it, and boy, does that feel good. That's slow dopamine. That teaches you that if you work hard, you get the reward. What technology does is it makes everything easy. And for us adults, that's usually good. Like, I want my life to be easy. I want to accomplish my goals quickly and easily. But I would ask, think about your children. Think about it. You have a 6 or 7-year-old child. How easy do you want to make that kid's life? If you could get servants for your child, you have a 6-year-old, would you get her a butler, a maid, a chauffeur, a chef? Like, how many servants do you want your 6-year-old to have? Probably 0, I hope, right? 0. 0 is the right number, okay? Because you want the kid to learn to clean up her own room and learn how to cook and learn how to get herself through life. But technology makes everything easy, and we should not do that for children.
Well, that is certainly something that we all need to ponder, and that's why we're having these most important conversations. Let's shift to something where Virginia is in the very bullseye and is leading the way. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about phone-free schools. As you're well aware, you heard Secretary Gadara talk about what has happened here in the Commonwealth, and by January of 2025, we will see bell-to-bell phone-free schools across the Commonwealth of Virginia. I know you are a proponent. Do you feel like our country is at a turning point on this issue?
I know it is, because we're halfway through it. It's happening at lightning speed. I've been involved in a variety of social change efforts where you have to persuade people and have a grassroots movement, and it's hard to get people's attention, and they don't want to stop to talk. And, it's hard to change people's minds. But on this issue, what's happened is that everyone who is a parent has seen what's happening. This is not a moral panic spread by the media. Everyone sees it, if not in their own children, in their friends' children, in their sisters' children. And everyone was uncomfortable, and we just didn't quite we didn't know exactly what to do. We didn't have a coordination device. And so what I did in the book was I said, how about if I just offer 4 clear norms that we can sort of come together around? And so phone-free schools is the most powerful and easy one to do. And it's incredible to me how fast it's happened. I never expected it to be like this. In the space of, there was 1 week where the Surgeon General came out with saying that there should be warning labels on social media, and Los Angeles schools announced the next day that they were going phone-free. This was back in June. And the governor of California said he was going to try to do it for the state, and the superintendent of schools in New York said he was going to try to do it. And this is right after. So those are blue states. But around the same time, I just spoken to the governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's been great on this. So red states, blue states. Parents are ready to go. Teachers despise the phones. Teachers are quitting in droves because for years they can't get through to the students. So phone-free schools is really a no-brainer. Just as we wouldn't allow kids to bring in their television set and VCR and trumpet and painting kits into class and sit there with their, it's just insane that they can do that with a phone. And so I really applaud, again, I just applaud Virginia for doing it. You did it pretty quickly, but thoughtfully. Like that, the guidance is it's really complete. And I would encourage, everyone, especially if you're a school administrator, the website, they should Google what, VDOE phone free, was that it? Cell phone free? If you just Google VDOE, Virginia Department of Education, phone free, they've got a great website with all kinds of resources, because of course there are lots of implementation questions. And schools need to learn from the schools that have gone ahead of them, because there are some challenges to implement it. But what I can tell you is this: I have never heard of a school that went phone free and regretted it. I've put out calls on Twitter. Can anyone find a school anywhere that got the phones out and said, wow, that was a mistake? Whereas conversely, whenever there's a story about a school that went phone free, I know exactly what it's going to say. It's always going to quote someone saying, we hear laughter in the hallways, and we haven't heard that in 10 years. Because when the phones are allowed in school, and especially what a lot of schools do is, we ban phone use during class. You have to put your phone in a phone caddy in the front of the room. So all the kids come in, they put their phone in a phone caddy, and then they sit and pay attention to the teacher. Are you kidding me? They're thinking about what's happening on the phone. They're addicted to it, and as soon as you're 5 minutes from there, they're thinking, like Pavlov's dog. I mean, you're ready to go. You got to get the phone, and then you run, you get the phone, and you only have 5 minutes between classes, so you got to scroll. So the only way to do this is bell to bell. Anyway, what I was saying is, nobody ever regrets it. Everybody has the same result, which is the kids are laughing. They're having fun. School becomes more fun. I just heard today, someone was telling me the story of a school in which a teacher said, for the first time in 10 years, I had to tell the class to quiet down before class started. Yeah. So do it. It's amazing. Well, you have to do it. You're ordered to do it, but do it, and it's going to work.
Well, I have no doubt that your research and your thoughts are making a difference in this space. My next question was for you to point out the difference between bell to bell versus just banning cell phones during class. You pretty much talked about that, but I have heard you speak into the lunch hour and the recess hour. And tell us a little bit about that for the teachers and the administrators that are watching.
Yeah. So beginning in the 80s, we cut way back on recess and free time. We thought, we've got to give them more math and science and English, drill. So we kept squeezing down recess. And some schools don't even have recess. It's just, 30 minutes for lunch and recess. So the kids are desperate for play. They need play. They were already play deprived coming into this. Now, what happens when they start bringing their smartphone to class? What you see on the playground is you see a lot of kids are sitting, either they're alone on their phone or they're sitting in groups looking at the phone, but they're not running around. They're not nearly as social. They were play deprived. They had a small block which they could have played, but the phone takes that time. So school becomes a play-free zone, which is so sad. So it's vital that it be bell to bell. You must not, if the students say, but can't we have it at lunch? No. The point of lunch is to actually eat your food, not just, wolf it down and get back on your phone. The point of lunch is the social skills. And this is something that employers comment on all the time. I teach in a business school, and I always ask, how are your Gen Z employees doing? And the employers have so many problems. One of them, they say, is they have such poor social skills. They don't look you in the eye, especially the boys. So the lunchtime without phones is so good for the kids. Lunchtime with phones is bad for the kids.
Well, this bell-to-bell phone-free school, I've been giving my husband a hard time, and I've been saying, well, every single parent and every single teacher and every single principal in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia is throwing you under the bus. They're saying, it's not my rule, it's the governor's rule.
Yep. Which is
so
great,
he's not probably well liked by many of the teens in the Commonwealth now.
But give it a month. That's the thing.
But he's fine with that.
The students think it's going to be bad. But what the students discover within a couple of weeks is, wow, I can actually talk with other kids. Because kids are so lonely these days. This is one of the most striking things. Levels of loneliness shot up in 2012. Again, there was no change until 2012. And then here's where the boys actually go up a little bit more. They're so lonely because when you're connected to 200 people, you have no time for anyone. And that's what happened to our kids. So phone-free from bell to bell, they can actually connect.
Wonderful. Let's segue to a slightly trickier topic. And it was something that Secretary Gadara mentioned earlier. And there are some really uncomfortable real-world happenings in and around schools these days. Yeah. Parents are very concerned about not being able to reach students during a school emergency. And despite Virginia's best-in-class protocols and amazing communication tools, enhanced presence of resource officers, how should we think about this issue?
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you asked that, because this is the most common objection. And I completely understand it. You know, as I said, my kids go to New York City public schools, and if there was a shooting incident or something like that, I would want to know that they're okay. I would want to talk to them. I'd want to hear them. But we have to do what is best for the kids, not what's best for our feelings in the moment. And the school security experts all say the same thing. When there's an emergency, the last thing you want is every kid pulling out their phone and saying, "Bye, Mom, I love you." What you want is the kids to do what they drilled to do. There are reasons why we have security protocols in place. And so the security experts say, keep quiet, follow directions. The teacher has a phone. Well, the teachers will always have phones. So it's a natural parental response to want to call instantly, in part because we've been connected to our kids from the moment we cut the umbilical cord, we stay connected to them. And we have to learn to let go and trust that in the school, they care about the kids and they're doing what's best for the kids. So it's hard for us, but we have to do what's best for the kids.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move to the last one now, believe it or not. And this really falls into that category of unsupervised play, which I would argue is not specific to youth. We as adults need to do more of it too. But you spend a disproportionate amount of this book really talking about free play. Yeah. And you use the word discovery a lot. I loved that word discovery. At one point, you compare fragile children to fragile trees. I loved that. That was very helpful for me to visualize. Can you tell us that story?
Sure.
Because I'd love other people to share in that. And can you challenge us? Because I'm going to raise my hand as being one of those overprotective mothers. And we're protecting out of love. Yeah. But tell us how we can maybe be a little less protective of our kids.
Sure. So the key concept here is a word called anti-fragility or anti-fragile. Some things are fragile. You wouldn't let your kids play with a wine glass because if they play with it, it'll break. Nothing good happens. So we give them sippy cups, which are plastic, which is resilient. But if they drop a sippy cup, it doesn't get better. It just doesn't break. And there are certain systems, biological systems mostly, that actually get better when you drop them. So the immune system is the classic example. If you protect your kid's immune system, I don't want any bacteria or dirt or germs to get to my kid's immune system, then the immune system can't develop. Our evolution requires kids to play in the dirt, sample what's around, the immune system tunes up. So the immune system is anti-fragile. Our bones and muscles are anti-fragile. The story about trees is a funny one. There was older people remember there was a thing called the biosphere experiment in the 1990s where they tried to have an enclosed environment that humans could live in and use all the same oxygen and water because someday we'll have to do that on Mars. So they planted it, and they planted the trees. The trees in the tropical rainforest part, they grew quickly, but then they fell over for no reason. And it turns out that the designers forgot to include wind. Because when a tree grows, the wind pushes it, and that pulls on the roots, which tells the roots you got to grow more over here to anchor it. And it compresses the wood, and that tells the wood you got to adopt a form that's more resilient, it's tougher to compression. And if you take it easy on the tree, then it doesn't get strong. And if you take it easy on your child, if there are never any challenges, if they're never excluded, if they never take risks, if they're never afraid, they don't learn how to manage their own life in a world that has some risk. So what we need to do is to realize our kids need love. All kids need a secure base. All kids need an adult that they know they can go to, that they can trust. They need a secure base. But the point of the base is not to keep them safe for 18 years and send them off to college. Please don't send your kid to me at NYU if you did that. The point of the base is that the kid has a safe place to come back to when they go on their off-base excursions. That's why we have this long childhood. That's why baby kittens and dogs, they don't just play right by the mother. They explore, they climb up trees, they do all sorts of things, gradually going further and further away. And that's what you want. It's painful, perhaps, but that's, being a parent means ultimately letting go. So once you realize that kids are anti-fragile, that they need to go out and sometimes bite off more than they can chew, sometimes climb too high on a tree, sometimes get afraid, sometimes get lost, and discover that they can actually ask for help and get back. And so it's that kind of experience. If we can give them more of that, we speed their development, we increase their confidence, and we cut their anxiety and depression. And the best possible program to do that, you can do this at home, or better yet, do it in schools, is called the Let Grow experience. So here in the front row, we have Lenore Skenazy, my friend, who wrote the book Free Range Kids. And thank God my wife and I met her in New York City and read her book, and it helped us to let go with our kids, let them walk to school earlier, send them out to the grocery store when they were 8 or 9, when we were, and at first we followed them. We'd go out behind them and track them and, oh, okay, she's okay. And, so Lenore and I encouraged Lenore to really increase her effectiveness in the world. So we created a nonprofit organization called Let Grow. Go to letgrow.org. And our most powerful program, it's really ideal for schools, is called the Let Grow Experience. And all it is the kid it costs $0, costs nothing whatsoever. A mimeo, one piece of paper per kid. You take it, the kid takes it home, and the instructions are, find something, so talk to your parents and find something that you can do with your parent that you've never done before, with your parents' permission, but without your parents. And there's some suggestions. Maybe it's walk the dog. If you've never walked the dog by yourself, Mom, I think I could do that. Or maybe it's go to the corner store and get a quart of milk, or make my own breakfast, or make breakfast for the family, whatever. You come up with something, and then the parents agree, and then the parents sit back, and then the kid does it. Now think what happens. Suppose you have a school district. Suppose you have this school district right here. Suppose you do this for all the third graders. So all the third grades in this whole district, let's say, they do the Let Grow experience. What happens? Parents would never let their 8-year-old cross the street unsupervised. They'd never let their 8-year-olds go to a store 4 blocks away unsupervised. Well, now it's a homework assignment, and everyone's doing it. And before you know it, people see 8-year-olds doing things, and the 8-year-olds feel useful. And when they come back, it's always the same thing. They're jumping up and down. They're so excited because they've done something. And that's what childhood should be about. So the Let Grow experience is incredibly powerful. The kids love it, and it doesn't just have anti-anxiety effects on the kids. The more important effect, I think, is ultimately on the parents, because we're all so anxious when we let our kids out of our sight the first time. And what my wife and I found, is then the first day we let our son walk to school alone, we were really nervous. I mean, we wanted to run after him and make sure that he could cross the street. But he's so good at crossing streets and riding subways, and he understands it all. But by the third day, we weren't anxious anymore. And that's just straight, behaviorist conditioning. The way to get over anxiety is to experience it. And then nothing bad happens, and the next day it'll be less. So our parents raised us with a lot less anxiety, and we had fun and we had adventures. We have so much anxiety, we're not letting our kids grow. That's why it's called Let Grow. Let Grow.
That's amazing. You also mentioned, tell us your favorite piece of equipment on a playground.
Is definitely it's called either the playground spinner, or it's the thing where it's like this heavy metal thing with like the bars, and you have to push it, and if you get 4 kids, you can really push it, you run, and then you jump onto it. And for a lot of us, it was our first real experience of centrifugal force. Like we'd spun around, we'd gotten dizzy, but it's like a physics education. You begin to understand forces, and you get dizzy, but the thing is you have to cooperate. And the more kids you have, the faster it goes and the more exciting it is. And it's a little bit risky. Raise your hand if you ever played on one of these playground spinners, okay? Raise your hand, just those of you raise your hand. Raise your hand if you ever got hurt on one. You ever got thrown off? Yeah, okay, right? That was just so that's important. This is what I really want to get across. As one camp administrator once said to me, we want to see bruises, not scars. So if you send your kids to a camp where nobody gets bruised, don't send them to that camp. You want to so small risks are good for your kids, okay?
One other thing I want to follow up on here too. Notice I'm free-forming now. I'm sorry. You mentioned that play and slow growth activities are inconsistent with organized activities at which a parent is engaged and or very active. I think we all have really focused on sports and organized after school activities. That could be a dance class, that could be a brownie group, that could be whatever. But more often than not, as parents, we do engage. Right. Whether you're the coach, whether it's whatever. Why does that not allow for the level of emotional and physical growth that this Let Grow program, that this free range concept does?
So if you look around the world at traditional societies, you'll very rarely see an adult playing with a child. The kids are off playing in different age groups, multi-age, like older kids, younger kids, they're all off playing. And in that way, the older kids are actually learning to take care of the younger kids. The younger kids are looking up to the older kids. They want to copy them. If they get hurt, they don't want to cry and be a baby. They want to look tough and come back to the play. So much learning happens when you have mixed age play without adults. The most nutritious part is the conflicts. Jean Piaget, the great developmental psychologist, studied this, like when boys playing marbles. And he was especially interested in the disputes. Because when one kid says, no, you cheated, no, you're out of bounds. Okay, now they have to adjudicate it. And so, all the boys come together and they argue their case, and everyone wants the play to continue. So nobody's going to just storm off and go home, but they learn those skills of negotiation, of making your case, of sometimes the decision goes against you and you have to just go with it. So they learn really valuable skills for democratic society in free play without adult supervision. What happens on a video game? On a video game, there's no possibility of a conflict. There's never a dispute. There can't be, because the platform adjudicates everything. So the boys get a lot of excitement in play, but they don't get the nutritious skills. So a video game is really like junk food. It's got some calories, it's fun, but it doesn't do that sort of moral development. What happens when you're doing team sports with a bunch of coaches and adults screaming orders and taking care of all the dispute resolution? It's a lot better than sitting at home playing video games. At least it's teamwork on a field. So I'm not saying team sports is bad in any way. Team sports is very good. But it's just not nearly as nutritious or not nearly as good developmentally as, if you're, instead of being on a soccer team with coaches, if your kids have a regular Saturday pickup soccer game in the neighborhood, that's the best possible fit. It's much better than team sports with a coach. And if they are on team sports with a coach, at least to the degree that the coaches can step back and let the kids handle more things, that would be better.
Very inconsistent with the way things are done right now.
Yeah.
Just saying. Okay. You talk about overprotection. We're coming to a close here. You talk about overprotection in the real world, what we're just talking about, and underprotection in the digital world. What are we supposed to do about that as parents who may or may not be adept at navigating the digital world like our children are?
Yeah. So, as I said, in the 90s, we got really scared of the real world. We thought there would be kidnappers and criminals. Now, of course, the crime rate was actually plummeting in the 90s. The crime rate now is down to where it was in the early 1960s. So the world's gotten safer and safer. We didn't feel that. So we pulled our kids in. We don't let them go outside. But at the same time, in the 90s, the internet's coming in. And at first, the internet was amazing. And the millennials grew up on it, and they had fun with it, and they started companies, and they had inventions, they learned to program. So the early internet was actually pretty good. And we thought, well, this is just what childhood is. They're not out there playing, but they're playing in cyberspace. Like, wow, isn't that exciting? And at first, it wasn't terribly toxic. And so all the way through even 2012, when you get the Arab Spring, we're all thinking like, oh, the internet and social media it's going to tear down dictatorships. It's the best thing for democracy. Our kids are growing up on this. It's going to be amazing, we thought. And it wasn't. As we went through, between 2010 and 2015, a lot changes. It gets much more toxic. Facebook develops its business model. One of you was saying, I just was in the wings, one of you was talking about early Facebook. You just see photos. Like, there was no news feed, but Facebook develops a business model using algorithms to feed you content that it's selected to keep you on. That's when it gets really toxic and bad for kids. And that's when mental health plummets. So we need to, as we've been just talking about, we must stop overprotecting our kids in the real world. They have to grow up, they can't grow up on base. They have to grow up off base. We have to let them out. And at the same time, we have to protect them more in the online world. Now, once you give your kid a phone or access to the internet all the time, you're going to enter the phase that almost all parents are in, which is that family life is an eternal struggle over screen time, and your kids are better at it than you. So there's very few people who are really doing this well. It's really hard. People in Silicon Valley, either they have problems too, or they just ban it. In Silicon Valley, a lot of them don't let their kids use this stuff, and they send their kids to Waldorf schools that have no technology at all because paper and pencil is best. So the people who make the stuff know how bad it is for kids. We should probably pay some attention to that. Anyway, my point is, if you're going to try to regulate what they're doing online, good luck. That's really hard. That's why I just say over and over again, just delay it. Just delay. Let's have a norm that we just don't give our kids a smartphone before high school. You can give them a flip phone, especially in middle school, and do not let them on social media until 16. So again, that's the point of the 4 norms. It's hard if you're the only parent who follows these norms, then your kid is isolated. My daughter really wants Snapchat. She's the only one who doesn't have it. She's in 10th grade now. And I've said no. But what we hear over and over again is, I meet so many young people who say, my parents didn't let me have a phone, and I resented it at the time, but man, am I glad they did. You'll never find a person in their 20s who say, man, I wish my parents had let me have a smartphone and social media younger. You don't find that. You find a lot, and surveys show this, a lot who say, I wish they didn't give it to me so young.
So 2 more questions, and then we're going to go into conversation. Gen Z, let's face it now, has come along. Mm-hmm. A lot of the parents here actually have children that are a little bit younger. And this is purely selfish because Glenn and I are parents to 4 Gen Zers. Talk to families here and those online about what we should do now to support Gen Z in their journey, recognizing that they're really hurting.
That's right. So a great thing about Gen Z is that they're not in denial at all. They're not defensive about this. They know about the problems. They see that social media is causing their problems. They know that that their generation has mental health problems. And so they really want mentorship. They want challenges. And even if they don't know that they want that, if you put it to them that way, so if you're supervising, this is what I tell people in the corporate world, because everyone's having difficulty bringing their Gen Z employees on, and I say, have them read about anti-fragility. If you go to thecoddling.com, chapter 1 of that book was what I just told you about anti-fragility. If just have them read that, and they get it right away, and then say, I can either give you feedback. I can either be very careful and gentle and try not to hurt your feelings, or I can tell you everything you're doing wrong because I want you to grow. I want you to be excellent at this job. And I test this with my students. They'll all take the latter. So my point is, they've been play deprived, they've been independence deprived, they've been experience deprived. but it's not too late to make up for it in your late teens and early 20s. By 25, the brain is more sort of locked down. It's sort of done with myelinization in the prefrontal cortex. But I teach a course at NYU it's all freshmen and sophomores, and they're all doing this all day long, and they know it's bad for them, and it's hard to stop. But they do it together. They make amazing progress. You can make amazing progress if you change your habits. So what I would say to all the older Gen Z folks and all the parents of older Gen Z is if you change your habits, you'll change your consciousness. And you'll be able to develop focus. One of the most important things I do with my students is we turn off almost all notifications. And I encourage them to, when they're walking through a beautiful park, to not be multitasking, to just notice how beautiful the world is. A lot of them haven't noticed. And so there's a lot you can do in your late teens, early 20s, but you have to do it very deliberately, and it's going to be a lot easier if you do it with a group. If you can find a group of friends, or if you do it in a company. So it's hard to do alone, just because these things are so addictive, and everyone else is doing this stuff, and you're going to be pressured to do what everyone else is doing.
Great. So what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is that things are changing so fast. It's that the parents all see it and they're signing up like, yes, what can I do? The teachers all see it and they're like, hallelujah, we've hated this for 10 years. The principals are all like, it's been chaos and drama. Let's get rid of the phones right now. It's happening around the world. Australia just announced they're going to try to set the age limit at 16. They're going to try to do age verification and enforce a 16 age limit for social media. The UK is acting. So sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes we can face one of the largest problems we face. And I would put this up, I shouldn't say specific issues that people care about, but I think this certainly is one of the top 2 or 3, and I think the top issue we face, because we're talking about, it's not just mental illness, it's a decline in education. Education around the world has been dropping since 2012 because everyone's doing this all day long. It's a vast destruction of human potential and human capital. And so this is a gigantic problem. But it's incredible to me how much change there has been in the last few months, where we are at the tipping point. And the biggest things that can happen is for an entire state to go phone-free. Education policy in this country is all state and local. Federal government has nothing to do with it, thank God, I guess, because if it was up to them, not much would get done. But when a state like Virginia goes phone-free, fully, bell to bell, that shows that it's possible. That shows that when we come together, we can make big change. And at a time when our country is so divided, my other book was going to be about all these terrible problems we're having in American democracy. We have different sets of facts. We live in different worlds. Even still, everyone sees the problem. And on this issue, my team and I, we were just at Congress, we spent the day talking with representatives about COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act. And it's the most remarkable thing. Everybody, because almost all the politicians are parents, everybody has seen it. And this is one of the few issues that left and right, red and blue, we're all united on. So if we can't do this, then we can't do anything. And so when I see states like Virginia acting, I think maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do something.
I think we are doing this. So
We are.
there you go. I cannot thank you enough for your time. More than anything, I want to thank you for seeking culture change. It's based on data. We love data here. I don't think anything is random, and we're sitting in Old Bridge Elementary, right? So I looked up the definition of bridge today, and a bridge is a structure that carries a road or a path over an obstacle. And so tonight, I think potentially we are creating a new bridge that will help us recapture childhood in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the United States of America. We are so deeply grateful to you and your team. We cannot thank you enough. We are going to watch you closely to see what you come up with next. And I really do hope that this evening has been hugely encouraging. It certainly has been for me. I'm going to welcome the principal of Old Bridge up, please.